You think your grocery bill is bad right now? Let me tell you something that will change how you look at that receipt forever. In 1929, families didn't complain about high prices. They watched their fathers lose everything in a single afternoon. Banks closed their doors and never opened again. Life savings vanished like smoke. And millions of American families woke up the next morning with empty pockets and hungry children staring up at them. So what did they eat? Not what you think. And by the end of this video, you're going to look at your own kitchen completely differently. Because the truth is, the foods that kept families alive during the Great Depression weren't fancy. They weren't Pinterest-worthy. Some of them sound almost insane to us today. But every single one of them carries a lesson. A lesson about survival, about resourcefulness, and about a kind of toughness we've mostly forgotten how to use. Stick with me, because food number 17 on this list is something almost every household made, and I guarantee you've never heard of it. And the very last one? It's the dish that saved entire towns from starving, and nobody talks about it anymore. Let's start at the beginning. Picture this. You're a mother in 1930. Your husband just lost his job at the factory. You have 4 mouths to feed and maybe 50 cents to your name for the whole week. What do you cook? You start with potato peel soup. Not potato soup. Potato peel soup. Families would save every single peel from their potatoes, boil them in water with a little salt, maybe an onion if they were lucky, and that was dinner. It sounds bleak. But here's the twist. Potato skins are packed with nutrients, more than the potato itself in some cases. These families were unknowingly eating something healthier than most of us eat today. Funny how desperation sometimes stumbles into wisdom. Next up, and this one might surprise you. Dandelion greens. That we growing in your backyard right now? During the Depression, it was dinner. Women would send their kids out to the yard with a basket, pick every dandelion leaf they could find, wash them, and cook them down with a little bacon grease if they had any. Bitter, yes, but full of vitamins. Free food was growing right under people's feet, and they knew how to find it. Do you even know what's edible in your own backyard? Most of us don't anymore. That's a skill we lost. Then there's water pie. Say that out loud. Water pie. When families couldn't afford fruit filling, they made a pie crust, filled it with a mixture of water, sugar, flour, butter, and a splash of vanilla, and baked it until it thickened into something almost like a custard. It tasted like a poor man's version of a treat. And here's the thing that gets me every time I think about this one. Kids who grew up eating water pie remembered it fondly, decades later, as one of their favorite childhood desserts. Not because it was delicious. Because their mother made something out of nothing, just to see them smile. Let that sink in for a second. Because we're just getting started. Number 4 is one you've probably heard of. Hoover Stew. Named not kindly after President Hoover, who a lot of struggling Americans blamed for their misery. This stew was made from hot dogs, canned tomatoes, corn, and elbow macaroni, all cooked together in one big pot. Simple, filling, cheap, and honestly, it's not far off from something you'd make today on a busy Tuesday night. Some of these Depression recipes never actually went away. We just renamed them. Then came mock apple pie. Here's where things get wild. Apples were sometimes too expensive to buy in bulk. So what did resourceful bakers do? They used Ritz crackers. Yes, crackers. Soaked in sugar, cinnamon, and lemon juice, baked into a pie crust, the crackers would soften and mimic the texture of apples almost perfectly. People couldn't tell the difference. This wasn't some obscure trick either. Ritz actually printed the recipe on their box, and it's still floating around today. Imagine convincing your whole family that crackers are apples. That's not just cooking. That's magic. Number 6, creamed chipped beef on toast. Soldiers actually called this something a lot more crude, but we'll keep it clean here. This dish used dried beef, a white sauce made from flour, milk, and butter poured right over toasted bread. It was cheap protein stretched about as far as it could possibly go. One small package of dried beef could feed an entire family for a meal. That's the real skill these families had. Stretching. Making one thing do the work of 3. And speaking of stretching, let's talk about the poor man's meal. Sliced hot dogs, potatoes, and onions, all fried together in one skillet. That's it. That's the whole meal. But here's the twist that gets people every time. This exact dish is still cooked in kitchens across the South today. Grandmothers still make it. They just don't always know the story behind why their grandmother started making it in the first place. You might be eating a piece of Depression history right now and never even realized it. Number 8 brings us to Johnny cakes. Cornmeal, water, salt, fried on a hot griddle. No eggs. No milk. No sugar. Just cornmeal and water turned into something you could eat with your hands. Sailors ate them centuries earlier. Depression families revived them because corn was one of the cheapest, most available grains in America. When wheat prices climbed out of reach, corn stepped in to save the day. Which brings us naturally to cornmeal mush, our 9th food. Boiled cornmeal, thickened into a porridge, eaten hot with a little milk or sugar if you had it. But here's the clever part. Families would let the leftovers cool and harden in a loaf pan overnight. The next morning, they'd slice it and fry it in a pan. Same ingredients. 2 completely different meals. That's not poverty. That's genius. Are you starting to see the pattern here? Every single one of these families turned scarcity into creativity. And, honestly, isn't that something we could use a little more of today? Let's keep going because we're only at number 10 and things are about to get even more interesting. Beans and cornbread. This combination alone kept entire regions of the country alive. Beans provided protein. Cornbread provided carbs and calories. Together, they formed something close to a complete meal for pennies a serving. Families would cook a giant pot of beans on Sunday and eat off it all week long, adding a little more water each day to stretch it further and further. By Friday, that bean soup was pretty thin. But it was still something. And something was everything back then. Number 11 might make you cringe a little. Lard sandwiches. Just bread, spread with lard, sometimes sprinkled with a pinch of salt or sugar. No meat. No cheese. Just fat and bread. It sounds awful to us now, sitting here with our avocado toast and oat milk lattes. But lard was calorie-dense and cheap, and calories were exactly what hungry bodies needed to survive brutal winters with no heating. Number 12, sauerkraut. German and Eastern European immigrant families relied heavily on this one. Cabbage was cheap, it grew easily, and once fermented into sauerkraut, it could last through the entire winter without refrigeration. Refrigerators, by the way, were a luxury most families didn't even have yet. Fermentation wasn't a trend back then. It was survival technology. And here's number 13, and I'll warn you now, this one is not for the faint of heart. Head cheese. Made from the meat scraps of a pig's head, boiled down and set into a gelatin loaf. Nothing went to waste. Not the ears, not the cheeks, nothing. If it was edible, someone in that house was going to eat it. This is where we really see the difference between then and now. Today we throw away food without a second thought. Back then, throwing away edible meat could mean the difference between your kids eating tomorrow or not. Number 14 takes us outdoors. Squirrel and rabbit meat. Hunting wasn't a hobby during the Depression. It was a necessity. Fathers and older sons would head out with whatever gun or trap they had, and whatever they caught became dinner. Squirrel stew was incredibly common, especially in rural areas. It's tough to imagine now, sitting in a grocery store aisle with 100 protein choices in front of you. But for these families, dinner sometimes depended entirely on whether Dad had a good day hunting. Then there's canned salmon loaf, our 15th food. Canned salmon was actually one of the more affordable proteins available, and clever cooks turned it into a loaf using breadcrumbs, egg if available, and a little seasoning, baked until firm and sliced like meatloaf. It stretched one small can of fish into a meal that could feed a family of 5 or 6. We're at the halfway point now. And I promised you something surprising at number 17, so let's get there. Number 16 is oatmeal, but not the way you eat it. Oatmeal wasn't just breakfast during the Depression. It was breakfast, lunch, and sometimes dinner. Families would make a giant pot in the morning and eat off it throughout the day, adding whatever they had. A little milk in the morning. A little butter at lunch. Maybe some leftover fruit scraps at dinner if they were lucky. Same base, completely different meals, all day long. And here's number 17, the one I promised you. Vinegar pie. You heard that right. Vinegar. Pie. When lemons were too expensive or unavailable, bakers used apple cider vinegar mixed with sugar, butter, and eggs to create a filling that mimicked the tangy sweetness of lemon meringue pie. It sounds absolutely bizarre, I know. But people who've tried modern recreations of this recipe say it's shockingly good. Sweet, a little tart, surprisingly balanced. This is the food that most people today have genuinely never heard of, and it deserves a comeback. Isn't it wild how something born out of pure desperation could actually taste incredible? That tells you something important. Necessity doesn't just force survival. Sometimes it forces brilliance. Let's keep moving because we've got 8 more foods to go, and the stories only get more powerful from here. Number 18. Powdered milk. Fresh milk spoiled fast and cost money families didn't have. Powdered milk became the substitute, mixed with water and used for everything from drinking to baking to pouring over that endless pot of oatmeal. Kids hated the taste. Mothers didn't care. It kept bones growing and bodies functioning, and that was the only thing that mattered. Number 19. Self-rising flour biscuits. Just flour, a little baking powder, salt, and whatever fat was on hand, whether that was lard, bacon grease, or butter if the family was doing slightly better that week. These biscuits showed up on tables morning, noon, and night. Cheap, filling, and endlessly versatile. You could eat them plain, dip them in gravy, or use them to sop up the last drops of that thin bean soup we talked about earlier. Number 20 is molasses, and this ingredient deserves its own moment of appreciation. When sugar was too expensive, molasses stepped in. It sweetened biscuits, cornbread, oatmeal, and even coffee. It was cheap, it lasted forever on the shelf, and it packed a decent amount of iron and minerals that these malnourished families desperately needed, even if they didn't know it at the time. Number 21. Prune whip. Dried prunes were affordable and shelf-stable, so cooks would stew them down, whip them with a little sugar and sometimes egg whites, and create a light, almost fluffy dessert. It doubled as a natural remedy too, since prunes have, let's just say, other benefits. Frugal and functional. That was the Depression-era motto in a nutshell. Number 22. Hobo stew. Similar to Hoover stew, but made with whatever scraps of meat and vegetables a family could scrounge together, sometimes literally cooked over an open fire by men riding the rails looking for work. This dish tells a story bigger than food itself. It tells the story of an entire generation of men who left home searching for any job at all, cooking whatever they could find in tin cans over campfires just to survive one more day. Number 23. Bread pudding. Stale bread, milk, sugar, and egg if available, baked into a soft, custardy dessert. This one is important because it represents something bigger than just a recipe. It represents an entire mindset. Nothing was ever truly stale. Nothing was ever truly done. Everything had one more use left in it if you were creative enough to find it. Number 24. Chicory coffee. Real coffee beans were a luxury many families couldn't justify. So they roasted and ground chicory root instead, brewing it into a bitter, coffee-like drink that gave them the ritual and the warmth of morning coffee without the cost. Some families mixed it with just a small amount of real coffee to stretch their supply even further. Smart. Resourceful. Completely necessary. And now, number 25. The final food on this list. The one that quietly saved entire communities. Cabbage soup. It sounds almost too simple to matter. But cabbage was one of the cheapest vegetables available. It grew easily even in poor soil, and one large head could stretch into a pot of soup that fed a family for days. Community kitchens during the worst years of the Depression served cabbage soup by the gallon to hungry crowds standing in bread lines that wrapped around entire city blocks. This wasn't just a meal. For countless families, it was the difference between eating something and eating nothing at all. So there you have it. 25 foods that carried American families through the darkest economic collapse this country has ever seen. Now here's what I really want you to take away from all of this. These families didn't have Instagram recipes. They didn't have meal delivery kits or grocery apps that tell you exactly what's on sale. What they had was grit. What they had was the ability to look at almost nothing and turn it into something. Potato peels became soup. Crackers became pie. Vinegar became dessert. Stale bread became pudding. And honestly, That mindset didn't disappear. It's still sitting right there inside every one of us, waiting to be used. Because life doesn't always warn you before it gets hard. Jobs disappear. Prices climb. Circumstances change overnight, just like they did for millions of families back in 1929. But here's the real lesson. Struggle doesn't have to break you. It can actually make you sharper, more creative, more resourceful than you ever thought you could be. These families prove that. They turned scarcity into survival, and survival into stories that their grandchildren are still telling almost 100 years later. So the next time you feel overwhelmed by your grocery bill or worried about stretching your paycheck just a little further, remember this list. Remember that resilience isn't about having everything you need. It's about making the most out of everything you have. If this video opened your eyes even a little bit, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now because it genuinely helps this story reach more people who need to hear it. Drop a comment and tell me which one of these 25 foods shocked you the most. I read every single one. And if you want to see how families rebuilt their lives after the Depression finally ended, go watch the next video, because that story is even more incredible than this one. Thank you for watching until the very end. I'll see you in the next video.